All right, so we are going to start section 5 of Asteroid Destroyer. This is another pretty short one. We are just going to look at the thrusters and brakes, and we're going to get those working. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to your properties window or your project window here on the right, and we're going to get the thrusters. So you can go ahead and just drag that right onto your layout. And then you're going to notice the thrusters are pretty big. So we're going to go ahead and edit some settings within the image editor. So you're just going to double click on your thrusters here. First thing we're going to do is in the animation window here, make sure default is highlighted. And then you're going to go down and make sure that loop is checked because we want the animation to loop. And then the thruster, we actually want to rotate it to the right 90 degrees. So you can see here if I rotate it, it does just the one, and we want to rotate all of them. And you can see there's a lot of frames here. So to do that all one at a time would take a while. So remember, I think I showed you this earlier, but just hold shift and then click rotate, and it rotates all 23 frames. So then we're good to go. So I'm going to close that. So all we did was we set animation to loop, and then we rotated. Okay. All right. So now we've got this. You can see it's facing out the back, which is what we want. Still a little bit too big. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the size in the properties window. So if you have that highlighted, just go to the properties here on the left side. You'll see size right here. If you don't see size over here, just make sure that your thrusters is actually selected. And then we're going to go 48, 48. Press enter, and then that'll reset to a smaller size. And then our thrusters also need a behavior, and this behavior is called pin. So click on behavior, add new behavior, and you can type it in or find it. It just looks like a thumbtack here, pin. And the pin behavior does exactly what it sounds like. It literally will take a sprite or an object, and it will just pin it to another. So it's like kind of sticking it together, right? So essentially what will happen is we're going to want this to get pinned to our ship, so it will just follow it around is what it's going to do, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Control plus and zoom in a little bit, especially when you're dealing with something smaller. But basically we want this like right here on the back end of the ship. But the issue is we want it, you can see here that the thruster's on top, and that looks kind of weird. So we want to get that thruster underneath. So if you right click an object, so if we right click it, there's something called Z order, and that just means like height on the Z axis. So what's above something else or below something else in terms of depth. So we're going to do Z order, and we're going to move the thrusters to the bottom. And now you'll see that the ship is on top, and we have that right where we want to. So that's all you have to do to get the thrusters in place. Okay. And it doesn't matter where your ship is, as long as you have the thrusters underneath the ship. They could be located anywhere on the layout. It's fine. Because once we pin it, it's just going to follow the ship around. So what I would say is more important is make sure your ship is located where you want on your layout, and then put the thrusters underneath it. Okay, so we've got that in there. And then we're going to do the same thing with the brakes. So you should have brakes in here, so we can drag the brakes on. And see the brakes are really big too. Double click them. We're going to set the animation to loop. Okay, we are going to rotate. So I'm going to hold shift and rotate so that they're all going that way. Actually, the brakes don't have to be rotated because we're going to manually do it, but that's fine if you did it right there. Close that. Okay, so I have the brakes out here. So if you did or did not rotate it, it actually won't matter because we're going to have to rotate them all individually. And then we're going to resize it to 32 by 32. So go to the properties on the side here, 32, 32, press enter, and we have the brakes here. Now what we're going to do with the brakes is we're going to make 4 of them. And we have to give it pin behavior. So let's give it pin behavior first. So if I have that highlighted, go to behaviors, add a behavior called pin. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we want to make 4 brakes. So I'm going to hold control. And if I hold control and I drag, try to drag the brakes out, it'll actually make a new copy of it. So you just click and drag an object while holding control, and it will make more. The other option is you could grab more brakes from the right side and drag them on the layout. But this works here as well. And then all we're going to do with these is we want 4 of them. I might zoom in a little bit here with Control plus, just so you guys can really see what I'm doing. But if you look here, you can kind of hover. You can see I've got this here. If I grab it in the middle, I can move it. But if I hover to the left of like this middle square on any side, you get that black arrow. That black bendy arrow means I could rotate it. So what you want to do is you want to rotate these so they're kind of facing out like this, and you want to put them where you think the brakes would be. So they could be like right underneath the ship here. Maybe you think the brakes should be out here, more on the wingtips. I'm going to put mine like out here. And so what you're going to do is you're just going to drag and position these and angle them outward in a way that you think makes sense for the brakes. I'm going to do it here as well. Angle down. We'll go like right there. And then this one will angle out this way. Now, if you want to be really particular, you can go in the properties window and you can type in specific angles. So if you know like a specific angle you want and you want it to be a nice even number, you can go and type that in. I'm fine just kind of eyeballing it for now. And then basically what you'd want to do is you want to Z order and put all those on the bottom. Now you could right click each one and Z order it, or if you can get the ship, you could just right click the ship and you could Z order and send that to the top instead, and that'll just make it over everything. So you could do that, and then it should be on top of your brakes, your thrusters, everything. So that's what mine looks like. It's not perfect, but it doesn't really have to be. But as long as you have them somewhat in position, they all have pin, you should be good to go. Okay. So then what we're going to do is on the brakes and thrusters, there's one more property we want to change. So I'm going to click my brakes and I'm going to highlight it from the project window on the right side, because that way it'll highlight all four for me. And down at the bottom, there is something called initially visible, and we want to turn that off. So when we run the game, we actually don't want to see the brakes and thrusters. The idea is we're going to make the thrusters appear when we're accelerating. We're going to make the brakes appear when we're decelerating, okay, or when we're braking. Okay, so the brakes are going to be invisible, and I'm going to do the same thing. Click the thrusters from the right in the project window, and then go down to initially visible and uncheck that. Okay, then we're going to go to our event sheet. We're going to go to our on start of layout event here at the top. And at the top, what we have to do is we have to pin the thrusters and the brakes to the ship. So I'm going to add an action for brakes, and I'm going to just type in pin to object. Let's see, pin to object right here. And then we have to choose an object we want to pin to, and I want to pin it to the spaceship. And you can leave the X, Y, and angle, those can all be checked. All that stuff can be checked, I think. Just leave it as default and we should be good. Okay, and then what we're going to do is I'm going to add an action for thrusters, and we are going to pin to object. And we are going to pin to the spaceship with that as well. And you can just leave all those default settings right there. That part I was just on looks a little bit different. So they literally just updated it, like when I was, before I recorded this. Because normally what it would say is it would say pin, size, and position, or you could do position only, or no, angle and position, sorry. So normally when you pin, so I'm going to go back in here. Normally when you're on this screen, what it used to say was when you pin, you could pin by angle or position and angle or position only or angle only. But now what it does is just gives you X, Y, and angle right there. So if they're all checked, that's like pinning it to angle and position. So that's essentially what we're doing. Okay, so basically we just want it to follow around. So let's test it really quick. Let's run it. Oh, actually we can't test it because I made them invisible. Well, we'll check in a minute. We'll test it later. But what would happen is if they weren't invisible, they should just be on the ship, following the ship around constantly. That's what the pin does. Okay. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to go to the asteroid count event, and then this is in the wave system, I believe. So let's go to the wave system. We're going to go to this event here, asteroid count equals 0, wave greater than 0. Okay, so this event, remember, this triggers when you destroy the last asteroid and it kind of freezes everything in between waves. We also want to make sure the brakes and thrusters disappear, because it's be awkward if your brakes are going, you kill an asteroid, and then they just sit there and stay visible while you're waiting. So what we're going to do is we're going to add an action for the brakes and the thrusters. So I'm going to do brakes. We're going to do set visible. Okay, and we're going to set it to invisible. So you're going to change it invisible. And then we're going to do thrusters. We're going to do set visible. We're going to make those invisible. Okay, so on this asteroid count event here, we just set the brakes and thrusters invisible. Is what you want to do there. Okay, Then all we have to do is we just have to do some keyboard events to make them actually work. So what we're going to do is let's go back into the spaceship movement group where we have all of our keyboard commands. What we're going to do is on the up arrow is down, not only are we going to accelerate, but we're going to make our thrusters visible. So we're going to add an action for thrusters. We're just going to type in visible, set visible, and we're going to make it visible. So now when we're holding in the up arrow, we want the thrusters to become visible. And then when we're holding the down arrow down, this event here, we're going to add an action for the brakes, and we're going to make the brakes visible. So I'm going to do type set visible, and then brakes visible. Okay. Now the issue we're going to have, and this is why you have to be specific with the computer, we never tell the brakes and thrusters to go away. So the way this is programmed now is if I press up, the thrusters will come out, but then the thrusters are going to stay out forever. So we have to make it so the thrusters go away when we stop accelerating. So what we can do is we can do an event that says when we release the up arrow, we're going to make the thrusters invisible. So what I'm going to do is instead of just adding them at the bottom, because they're both up arrow, maybe you want it next to this other up arrow event. So this is a trick you can do if you want to like start an event in a certain spot. You can right click on the event here. So here's my up arrow is down. I'm going to right click it here and I'm going to add, and then you can insert an event above or below that one. So maybe like right below this one is where I want my up arrow released. So then I'm going to do keyboard, and then I'm going to do on key released, this one right here. And then I'm going to click and choose the up arrow, click done. So now when I release the up arrow, I just want to make the brakes or the thrusters invisible. So I could retype it out, or I could just grab this one and copy it, and then I can double click it and change it from visible to invisible. Okay, so when I release the up arrow, thrusters go away. When the up arrow is down, thrusters appear. Okay, same thing with the down arrow. So here's my down arrow event for the brakes. I'm going to right click. I'm going to add an event below. I'm going to do keyboard on key released, and we're going to do down arrow. And then we're going to copy the brakes event here. Just hold control, click and drag it down. And then I am going to double click and set that to invisible. Okay, so now when I do up, they'll say visible. When I'm down, we'll go invisible. So let's test it out really quick and see if that works. All right, so press enter to start the game. And now you can see as I hold up, they go. And then when I release, it goes away. Brakes, I hold down, they appear. And when I let go, they go away. So the thing is with programming, a lot of times you're just creating an illusion. So in reality, what's happening is the brakes and thrusters are always there. They always exist. Okay, and if you run it in debug mode, you'll see that. The trick is I'm just toggling them visible and invisible, but they're always there. And here's a way you can test it. So I'm not sure if up to this point if you've seen this yet or not, but I'll talk about debug really quick. So up here where you click the play button, if you click this little down arrow, you'll get more options and you can do debug layout. So if I do debug layout, you get the same thing, but you get some options down here at the bottom that kind of show you some things. And down here, for example, it shows me how many of each object exists. So you can see here, I have 4 brakes on the screen and I have 1 thrusters. Even though I can't see them, they're there and they exist. The other quick little thing about this debug mode that's nice is if I click on an object like, say, my spaceship, it'll highlight it up here. And then up here, I can see all of the statistics and all of the things that it has. And I can drag this bar up so I can see a little bit more. But I can see its XY coordinate. I can see any variables that it has. So here's his health, so I can see what my ship's health is. So if I go ahead and run the game, you'll see that my ship can move around. If an asteroid wanted to appear, I don't really see one yet, but there should be an asteroid out here somewhere. But I was going to say if the asteroid hits me, we could see the health go down. And I can check here, do I have an asteroid? Yep, there's an asteroid. It's just, oh, there it is. It just took a really long time to get to me. Okay, so now if I go back to my spaceship down here, I can click on myself there. There, so you see my health is 128. So now if I run into this asteroid, you'll see that my health goes down to 118. And then I can press enter again, I'll get more asteroids. And we can test our code from last time where if we shoot the asteroids, they should split into smaller asteroids like that. And then they all do damage to me. Okay, so that's basically it for section 5.